10. As the owner and proprietor of Wicked Wicks, I'd learned long ago that I had to wear many hats. I was the CEO, the cashier, the chief shrink officer, and the customer service representative. I should point out I also manufactured the stock, which put me in a unique position as my own supplier. And sometimes I had to act like a bouncer, or a bartender shouting out last call when I still had customers wandering around the shop when closing time was fast approaching. "You know what we need?" Celine asked from her perch on the shelves behind the register. I braced myself for her latest suggestion. "A loudspeaker," she said. "Or one of those air horns. You know, something to light a fire under these lollygaggers. Ooh, you know, a flamethrower really would add some pep to their steps." Oh, good grief. Move aside arachnophobia, I had a new nightmare to deal with. Celine with access to a flamethrower. "Yeah, that's never going to happen," I told her. Her eyes narrowed to slits as she scanned the remaining customers. "You're just too nice. You think these people care at all about your needs? Do you think they respect the fact that you have things to do besides wait on them hand and foot?" I thought this was rich, considering Celine was likely 2 or 3 weeks away from demanding I carry her everywhere so her feet wouldn't accidentally step into a puddle. Heck, maybe she'd go straight to asking me to construct a gold-plated litter to cart her around in. "I mean, look at that guy over there," she continued, zeroing in on a teen in the corner. "He hasn't even looked up from his phone the whole time he's been in here. $20 says he's just in here looking for Pokemon." "Celine, calm down." I shot her a glare. "You can leave any time you'd like, remember?" She leaped out onto the counter and caught the attention of a woman shopping through the clearance baskets. "You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." I grabbed her before she could finish and hauled her into the back room, getting a couple of scratches on my hands for my trouble. "Knock it off," I hissed. "We had an agreement, remember? When I took you in as my familiar, you promised you wouldn't heckle my customers." "I get it. You're clearly hangry, and I'm sorry I forgot your tuna at lunchtime, but this is ridiculous." Celine glared up at me. "Oh, that's not a shocker. You probably would have ordered it wrong anyway." I planted my hands on my hips and leaned over her. "Can't you be nice? Ever?" "I could be, yes. But what would the point of that be? People would start expecting me to be nice all the time, and then they'd walk all over me. You know, like they walk all over you." I bristled. "People do not walk all over me." "Oh, yeah? What about those customers out there?" "Celine, they literally pay my bills. Your bills." "Okay. And what about Roger? Always coming in here, even though you told him you just want to be friends? He certainly doesn't pay your bills, so what's your excuse there?" I slammed my mouth closed. "That's different." "Uh-huh. Listen, I'd rather err on the side of courtesy than be mean-spirited like you." "Mean-spirited?" Celine's mouth gaped open. "Is that really what you think of me?" I felt a stab of guilt, but I was too worked up to give in to it. Yes, it is." "Oh, well, thank you. But flattery will get you nowhere. The fact is, you need me. You need me to be the bad guy, so you can point to me and say, 'Hey, look, there goes the bad guy.'" "Celine, you're quoting Scarface again, and I don't need you to be the bad guy." "Yes, you do. You're all sugar and spice and everything nice. 'Oh, look at me, I'm Cora. Oh, phooey, I burned the darn muffins. Oh, look at my pretty little candle that will make you dream of Tom Cruise sweeping you away on a moonlit cruise.'" First of all, I don't sound like that. My voice sounds nothing like that. "Like what?" "Like a pixie popping helium pills. And secondly, I'm not a pushover. I stand up for myself. I just pick my moments. I'm not like you, snapping and sniping at everyone. But if someone crosses a line with me, I let them know." "Uh-huh. You know what? I don't need this today." With a growl of frustration, I turned my back on the cat and went out to help the last of my customers. Celine sulked in the back room, and glared at me when I hit the lights and joined her again, deposit envelope in hand. "Feeling better now?" I asked. "No, but at least you're done piddling around." I closed my eyes and counted to 3, desperate to regather my last shreds of patience. "Come on," Celine said. "Let's get going. We need to go to Lavender's house and see if we can find that book." "Happy, happy, joy, joy," I muttered, and instantly regretted it. The truth was, I wanted to look for the book. I wanted to find my aunt. I just wished I could have one night of quiet. If I was lucky, my earbuds were somewhere in the bottom of my purse. Celine harumphed. "Fine, be that way. I guess I don't have to tell you what I found out about Ernesto while you were peddling candles." I quirked an eyebrow. "You heard something about Ernesto?" "I did." "Oh, come on, Celine, just spill it, please." "I went down to that disgusting bar and spoke with the owner, Jerry. You know him?" I nodded. Jerry was a Scotsman who'd run Merlin's Well for decades. He was a hard-looking man, but everyone knew he had a heart of gold. "What did he say?" "You were good, weren't you?" Celine ignored my question. "Jerry didn't want to speak ill of a customer, but there was this other old geezer there at the bar, and he said that Ernesto only has one setting when it comes to drinking: blackout drunk. He told me that Jerry has to cut him off most nights and call him a cab before he gets that way. And on more than a few occasions, Ernesto swiped bottles of liquor and poured himself an extra finger or two when Jerry's back was turned." Oh, boy. I shook my head. That's actually pretty sad, don't you think? "His wife seems to think so. This guy had all the dirt. Says Ernesto and his wife argue like all the time, too. Mostly about him being a worthless drunk and drinking away all their money." I can see why that would put some strain on their relationship. But why would he go around telling people all of the painful details of his personal life like that?
Hello? What part of drunk are you not understanding?"
Celine scoffed. "I guess." I was struck with a sudden idea. Say, could we do what we did with Clint's brother and hold a seance? Maybe we'll have more luck this time and Sal will remember what happened that night.
"It won't work,"
Celine replied. "Why not?"
"A seance doesn't work if the soul has already crossed over to the Stardust realm."
"And how do you know he's already crossed over?"
"Look, spirits only linger in the shadow realm when they feel like they have unfinished business. A guy like Salvatore has done like everything. Climbed every mountain, conquered every challenge. Plus he's old. The older the being when they pass, the more likely they are to cross over directly to the Stardust realm. Combine those two factors and it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that our boy Salvatore Greco is already in another realm."
I see. But wouldn't it be worth it to try? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but talking to Salvatore would go a long way toward narrowing down the search for his killer. Assuming he was killed in the first place, I added, which I still wasn't sure about. Celine sighed.
"We would need a sample of his closest living relative's blood. The profile in the Gazette said he was leaving behind a nephew. No mention of siblings."
I bobbed my head. "So we'd have to get Ernesto's blood?"
"Yes, exactly."
"That would be an awkward conversation," I said with a cringe.
"You think?"
Celine followed me into the alley behind the shop and hopped into her basket.
"On top of that, if Frankie's hunch was right and Ernesto has something to do with this, I doubt he'd be willing to participate in the ritual."
"That's a good point."
"Of course it's a good point. I just made it."
"Okay." I frowned as I got on the bike. "Let's not start arguing again."
"Why not? I'm good at it,"
Celine replied, with a flash of her dainty teeth. We poked around in Lavender's so-called research library, trying to find Oben's tome, but after 2 frustrating hours, I gave up and sat down on the floor. "This is hopeless, Celine. If the book is here, I don't think we're ever going to find it." The cat swished her tail as she took one more slow walk around the room, jumping from book to book before landing on the desk. Peering down at me, she sighed.
I suppose we could go and speak with Ernesto directly, get his side of the story, see if he has an alibi for the night his uncle died.
You really think he'd talk to us? With Frankie, it was easy enough. Well, until you started spouting all that nonsense about Survivor, anyway.
Hey, I won that bet, thank you very much. I got 50 cold smackaroos from Bart over at the fish market.
I stared up at the cat. You were serious? How do you even have money to gamble with? Celine flashed her teeth.
Well, I don't, but you do.
With a groan, I flopped back against a stack of books. You're going to be the death of me, or at least the thing that sends me to bankruptcy court.
Nonsense,
Celine exclaimed, leaping through the air before landing on the books behind me.
I won you double your money, if anything. You should be thanking me.
Naturally. I pushed up to my feet. Come on, let's get going. Any chance you know where Ernesto lives?
Oh, yes. Lavender dragged me to his place when he hosted a birthday party for Sal a few years back. He lives out in Rolling Pine Hills, she said with a shudder.
What's wrong with Rolling Pine Hills? That's a nice neighborhood.
Oh, come on, Cora. It's like the most generic, cookie-cutter, yuppie-infested suburban nightmare ever. Straight out of the Stepford Wives, only somehow worse because we live in a magical town and things should just be more interesting than that by default.
The cat scoffed as she stalked out of Lavender's guest room. 1, I think you're exaggerating, and 2, I think they're called hipsters, not yuppies these days.
Not even close on either account. I'm not exaggerating, and hipsters are not synonymous with yuppies.
Then what are hipsters? I get this mental image of beards and flannel shirts and coffee shops.
Okay, take the anti-establishment bent of the hippies and then add in the unaffected air of snobbery of an Ivy League legacy kid.
Celine snickered.
Poof, you've got a hipster.
I don't get it.
Well, let's take magic, for instance. The yuppie witch has a great collection of high-end brooms, wands, cauldrons, etc. They're quite annoying and brag about their possessions constantly. A hipster witch, on the other hand, was into magic way before you were, bro, and they're so over it now. See the difference?
They both sound equally annoying, I muttered, though I wasn't at all sure if Celine had a point or not. Personally, I tried to avoid boxing people into categories. I had wealthy friends, not so wealthy friends, friends who liked yoga and hiking, and friends who preferred the great indoors. People were just people to me, all shapes and sizes and colors. In any case, it doesn't really matter what neighborhood they live in, I said, hopefully putting an end to the weird side conversation. We drove to Rolling Pine Hills, which, as Celine said, was one of the newer developments where the Homeowners Association likely wielded more power than the goddess herself, judging by the artfully kept shrubbery, meticulously groomed lawns, and spotless streets. The sidewalks and driveways were a uniform tan, nary a crack in sight, and as we approached the Greco home, I had no doubt that if I were to take a level and lay it across the blades of grass in their front yard, the bubble would land dead center between the middle lines. The homes were all huge and nice, but it wasn't a place I personally would consider. For one, it was way too far from the water. And I also didn't relish the idea of ever living someplace where the simple mistake of leaving your trash bins out overnight could land you a citation. What should I say? I asked Celine as we stepped on to the Greco's front porch.
Seems like you should have figured that out before we got here,
Celine said as she plopped her rear end on the welcome mat. Before I could gather my thoughts and come up with a strategy, the front door swung open and a tired-looking middle-aged brunette appeared, her eyes going wide. Who are you? If you're with the high school choir, I already donated at the car wash 2 weekends back. No, I said, slightly taken aback. Did she think I was a teenager? Sure, I was short, but I didn't look like a child.
What kind of 17-year-old has crow's feet?
Celine asked the woman. The woman recoiled, surprised by the talking cat. I delivered a gentle-ish kick to Celine's fuzzy rear for the crack about the crow's feet. I'm not with the school, I told the woman. I'm looking for Ernesto Greco. Is he home? What do you want with Ernesto? Her gaze turned more hostile as she zeroed in on me. She raised one hand and revealed a slim cigarette. Lighting it, she shuffled out onto the porch, silently forcing Celine and me to take a few steps back to make space. I have reason to believe his uncle Salvatore was murdered, and I was hoping to speak with Ernesto to see if he might have information for me. Her eyes narrowed to slits as she took a long drag from the cigarette. Is that so? Then what are you, press? Police? Some distant relative of Sal? Huh? She didn't seem surprised by the suggestion that Sal's death may have involved foul play. I'm not any of those things, no, I said, wishing I'd come up with a better cover story. Or any cover story, for that matter. Maybe I should have just lied and said I was with the paper. At least then I'd have a reason to be there on her front porch, poking around for information. Hey, Mickey, who is that? The guy from the insurance company? A male voice called from inside the house. The woman turned around to address the speaker. No, some girl who thinks your uncle was murdered? I cringed at the bluntness in her statement. Murdered? Well, let her in. I'd like to hear what she has to say. The woman rolled her eyes, but she stepped back from the door. Please, by all means, come inside. Thank you, Mickey, I said. Michelle, she snapped. Oh, sorry, Michelle. I stepped past her and laid eyes on a man sprawled out in a lazy boy recliner, with a beer in one hand and a huge plastic bowl of chips on his lap. The Greco home had a den, or office space, directly to the right of the entryway, and it seemed to have been turned into Ernesto's man cave, judging by the sports memorabilia hanging from the walls, the massive flat-screen TV, and the pair of lounger chairs. As for Ernesto himself, he didn't stand out to me in any way. He shared some common features with his uncle, but had none of his uncle's poise or polish. Granted, it would be hard for even James Bond to look suave if he had a beer belly and a mess of potato chip crumbs enmeshed in his mat of dark chest hair. So, you think my uncle might have gotten himself offed? He took a swig of beer and belched loudly. His hairy toes wriggled against the carpet as he waited for my response.
Phew, forget what I said about yuppies, Celine told me.
Shh, quiet, Celine. I turned to address Ernesto. I'm so sorry for your loss. He inclined his head, then grabbed another fistful of chips. But yes, I do think maybe he was pushed down the stairs, I said hesitantly. I wouldn't be surprised. Some of his customers could be a little scary. They look all harmless in their tweed suits or whatever, but I tell you, some of them can get pretty cutthroat when it comes to rare books and other artifacts. Ernesto shuddered. A bunch of creeps, if you ask me. I took another step into the room. So you think that if anyone was going to kill Salvatore, it would have been over a book deal? I don't know, Ernesto said. The cops said it was all an accident. Sal got into some top-shelf bourbon and took a tumble. I couldn't help but feel a little repulsed by his lack of emotion. What makes you think he was killed? Michelle interjected from her place in the doorway. Did the police change their minds and open an investigation? No, at least not yet. I heaved a sigh. I dipped a toe in the water. I may as well jump all the way in. Who are you? Michelle asked, crossing her arms over her ample chest. You haven't given us your name. My Aunt Lavender was a friend of Sal's. Lavender? Ernesto repeated, squinting at me. When his eyes widened, he smiled. I can see that. You sort of look like her. What's the old bird up to these days? Last time I saw her, she was talking about going to Greece to find Athena's hairpin or something silly. My heart jumped. When was that? Oh, 2, maybe 3 years ago. Ernesto shrugged and took another swig from his beer can. My hopes deflated. What does that have to do with Sal? Michelle asked. So your aunt is a friend. I don't see why you're poking your nose around in any of this, asking my husband all these questions. Yeesh, Mickey, she's just a kid. Go easy on her, Ernesto said. Then he held up his beer can and jiggled it. "What do you say you get me another one of these?" Michelle glared at her husband, nostrils flaring. Abruptly, she turned to me. "If you want to know who had it in for Sal, you might want to go yank August Nell's chain." "August Nell?" Ernesto repeated, his large brow furrowed. "He's one of the old man's best customers. Why would he want to kill him?" Michelle huffed. "It's just something I overheard a few days ago at the Witch Doctors Without Borders charity auction." Ernesto struggled to sit up a little higher in his recliner. "What did he say, Mickey?" "I think it had something to do with Sal having a book he promised to August and not handing it over like he was supposed to. He kept saying Salvatore was holding out on him. It sounded pretty serious." "Huh. Still, a guy like August Nell? He could buy a whole library full of books," Ernesto said. "The guy is a bona fide millionaire. He's the one who built the Winterspell chalet. He's big in real estate." That's why the name had sounded familiar. Michelle tossed her hands up. "Hey, you wanted information and now you've got it," she said, before stalking down the hall, presumably toward the kitchen. "I'm sorry about my wife," Ernesto said once she'd gone. "She's been temperamental ever since Uncle Sal died. He treated her like a princess. I'm sure you can understand." I smiled reassuringly. Of course. I'm sure none of this is easy on you guys. Not only are you grieving, but word on the street is you're the one who has to fill Sal's shoes now that he's gone. I imagine it's quite daunting to take on the role of the Arcane Council's archivist. He shrugged. I'm not one to let stuff stress me out. I figure I'll learn how to do it as I go. You know, go with the flow, improvise. I've read that the most brilliant minds improvise most of the time. Well, I don't really read, but someone else read it and told me about it. I think it was on a podcast or something. I cocked an eyebrow. I was starting to see why there had been so much outrage at his posthumous promotion. Ernesto's brow furrowed in thought. "You know, my uncle had meetings with the bigwigs at the Order every Thursday night. You might want to ask them and see if anything was off that night. My uncle was a pretty diplomatic guy, but even he had a limit. Maybe they know someone who wasn't happy with him." "On Thursday? You weren't at the meeting too? I thought you were sort of in training." "Hey, I was probably supposed to be there for some reason or another, but nobody told me the exact time, right? So I met up with some buddies down at Merlin's Well instead. I should have known something was wrong with Sal when he didn't call me the next morning to yell at me for missing the meeting." Ernesto ducked his chin and stared down into the bowl of chips for a long moment. "Again, I'm so sorry for your loss." I took a step backward. "Thank you for your time, Ernesto." As I was slipping out the door, Michelle was stomping down the hall, a cold beer in hand. She gave me an irritated look, and I hustled to close the door shut behind me. As we walked to the car, Celine looked up at me. "Phew, those two are really in the running for America's sweethearts, aren't they?" I shrugged. "Maybe not, but Ernesto seemed pretty sincere to me. What do you think about his story? You already verified his alibi. He was at the bar that night. Frankie's story puts him there, too." "Strike two," Celine said. Exhaling, I paused and unlocked the car. "So I guess now we need to look into August Nell." Celine smiled.
"Oh, sure. I mean, how hard could it be to get a meeting with a literal millionaire to ask if he's some kind of cold-blooded killer? This should be a piece of cake."
11. Clint had dinner plans with his mother, so it was just me and Celine at the house that evening. In some ways, I was losing track of what it was like to live alone. Before Celine, I spent the majority of my nights in silence, killed only by turning on the TV to whatever I could find that was halfway interesting. It wasn't that I'd minded being on my own, but now that I had company, I realized that maybe I'd been lonelier than I'd been willing to admit, even to myself. As I sat down on the couch beside Celine to watch one of her favorite shows, I couldn't help but smile at the contented look on her face. Maybe we'd both been lonely. My Aunt Lavender meant well, but she didn't make for good company most of the time. She lived too much in her own head and tended to forget about those around her, Celine included. Of course, my sympathetic and sentimental thoughts quickly vanished in the morning light when I awoke to the persnickety cat sitting on my chest, caterwauling a song of her own invention.
Hey, I wrote a song for you, Cora. It's called There's No Food in My Bowl, I'm starving. Look at me, I'm skin and bones, but you lay there lazy as a toad, a toad.
I glared at her from above the seam of my coverlet. That doesn't rhyme, and nobody's getting fed until I go to the bathroom. Maybe next time, try not using my bladder as your own personal trampoline. Afterward, I stumbled about the kitchen, feeding Celine and getting the coffee pot going. It wasn't much, but it was our little routine.
You're really going to the shop again today?
Celine asked when she finished noshing on her fancy cat food. I glanced up from my bowl of oatmeal. Of course.
I think you should read this book. It's called The 4-Hour Work Week.
I arched a brow. Oh yeah? Does it have a winning lottery ticket stuffed in the pages somewhere? Because if not, I don't think something like that would be of much help. Celine paced the length of the kitchen, her tail swishing in time with her ranting.
Look, all I'm saying is that you should live a little. All this work, it's exhausting.
I couldn't help but smirk. Okay, and which part is exhausting for you? For the most part, you just nap in whatever part of the shop is getting the best sunlight. The cat stopped and peered up at me.
Would it blow your mind if I said I was worried about you?
I blinked. Actually, yeah, it kind of would. I lifted a hand to the side of my head and made an explosion gesture, complete with sound effects. Celine swirled away from me and stalked out of the room, muttering under her breath. I smiled and shoved a bite of oats into my mouth. Despite Celine's lecture, there was work to be done. I couldn't wave a magic wand and replenish my stock, make sales, and clean. If only. But as I went about the day, I did wonder if maybe I was at a place where I could justify having a full-time employee. During the summer, I usually hired 1 or 2 college students to help with the busiest season. They left to go back to school at the end of August, as things were slowing down. It had worked well so far, but then my life had grown more complicated in the past months. I had Clint. I still wasn't sure how to categorize him. Then there was Celine. My patchy social life, most of which revolved around Liana, book club, and Thursday nights at Merlin's Well. I also had my family dinners every other Tuesday night. It all left precious little time for anything outdoorsy. Kayaking, hiking, swimming, stargazing. Maybe I should release a little of the pressure before things boiled over. It was 9:45 when Clint's BMW pulled into the parking spot nearest Wicked Wick's door. I hadn't been expecting him, and quickly brushed a hand through my still damp hair. I glanced down at Celine. How do I look?
Haggard, worn out. Clearly not the first pick at dodgeball or the school dance.
Never mind, I snapped. I forced a smile as Clint turned and used his shoulder to push open the door, as his hands were full of pastries and coffee. Good morning, he said, stopping long enough to peck me on the lips. His kiss felt warm and wonderful. The smoothness of his recently shaven cheek, the sultry notes of his expensive cologne, and his general manliness combined to make my head spin just a little. Good morning. Did you bring me breakfast again? You've got to stop doing that. Why? He asked with a laugh, laying his burdens down on the sales counter.
Because Spanx can only do so much,
Celine quipped. I glared at Celine. You know what? I'm going to enjoy my pastries. And if you say one more nasty thing to me this morning, I'm going to whip you away in a tornado so big, you'll be lucky if you ever come back down again. I hope you like living in the land of Oz. Celine scampered off into the stockroom. Just in case she got any ideas about returning, I sent a gust of wind after her and slammed the door shut behind the cat's loping form. She knows better than to tempt fate, I muttered under my breath. Hey, don't sweat what that cat says. You're a very beautiful woman, Cora. I turned my gaze down toward the floor, feeling my cheeks flush. You don't have to say that. Have to? Clint chuckled and shook his head. Oh, there's no have to about it. I'm just out here stating the facts. Well, then I'm a lucky lady, I said, looking up through my lashes to meet his eyes. They were dark brown and always seemed to have a little gleam of sparkle in them. We kissed again, before settling in for our tasty treats. The pastries were delicious, though Clint somehow managed to buy every flavor but my favorite. There was tangy lemon, rich blueberry, and sweet cherry, but no cream cheese. I happen to think cream cheese pastries, when done correctly, are an art form unto themselves, transcending their more mortal kin. Which isn't to say that I didn't demolish the pastries Clint did bring. I'm not saying that at all. The coffee was the perfect contrast. A South American blend with bold, darkly roasted flavor and a hint of cinnamon without any cloying sweetness. The bitter yet flavorful coffee was a great chaser to the sweet pastries. I was wiping my fingers on a napkin and considering the last swallow in my paper cup when the bells hanging over the front entrance jingled. Clint and I both glanced up as a good-looking man in his early 30s strolled in. He stood about the same height as Clint, but was easily 20 pounds heavier, all of it muscle and broad shoulders. His expertly manicured beard and rugged sense of style made him look as if he'd stepped off the page of a Cabela's catalog. He was my ex-husband, Roger, and he too came bearing gifts. "Hey, Cora," he said, barging in. His gaze focused on the packages in his arms more than what was transpiring inside my shop. "I know this is sudden, but I was at Sugar Shack getting some treats, and I remembered how much you loved cream cheese pastries, and so I thought, what the heck, why not surprise her?" He looked up at last and froze dead in his tracks when he saw Clint standing there. Roger's gaze darted from Clint to my face to the pastry remnants of our breakfast repast and back through the whole cycle again. "Except that you're already having breakfast with Clint. Hello, Clint." "Hello, Roger," Clint said, flashing an awkward smile. I could have died from the awkwardness. It reminded me of the very first night that I'd met Clint. I'd been in the midst of closing up when he stopped in, looking for a gift for his mother. I'd wisely steered him away from the spicy dreams candle he'd been carrying around in his hands, and somewhere along the way, he'd asked me to dinner. And then Roger had waltzed through the door. Awkwardness ensued, and Clint had gone running for the hills before I could give him a definitive answer about his dinner invitation. What can I say? The man has impeccable timing. Roger cleared his throat. I guess I should have called ahead, huh?" He forced a laugh before depositing the bag on the counter. "Ah, here you go. You two should, enjoy those. I'll be going." "Are you sure you don't want them?" Clint asked, gesturing at the bag. I'm lactose intolerant," we both finished in stereo. Roger smiled at me. "What she said." With a laugh, he headed for the door. "Thanks for thinking of me," I told him. Roger cast one last, longing look over his shoulder before he departed. We'd been divorced for 18 months, and for most of that had lived in different cities. Different worlds, really, as he'd opted to leave Winterspell and the magic world entirely and strike out into the non-magical world. But when his burgeoning startup crashed and burned, he'd returned to home, and, to my bewilderment, seemed to be under the impression that he and I could pick up where we'd left off. I didn't want to get romantically entangled with my ex, but there was still a mutual love and respect that made it hard for me to tell him to kick rocks. "So," Clint said, opening the bag that Roger left. "Cream cheese is your favorite, huh? I never knew." "You never asked," I blurted. I hadn't intended it to be mean, but Clint winced. I should have just told you. You're not a mind reader," I said, smiling to recover the moment. I mean, unless you are and you just haven't told me yet. No, you're right. I should have asked. He shrugged. These do look tasty. You want a bite? No, thank you. My tummy is stuffed already. You go right ahead. He rolled the top of the bag down again without taking a pastry. That's okay. You keep them for tomorrow. I'd bet they're great after a few minutes in the toaster oven. He grinned, trying to make the situation feel less awkward. After a second, he checked his watch. I hate to eat and run, but I need to get going too. Oh yeah? Another big-time business deal? Not this time. I'm actually meeting with one of the local real estate agents about finding a rental property. Have you heard of the Farrow brothers? Yeah, I think they might be the only real estate agents in Winterspell, I said with a laugh. They helped me and Roger when we bought my house. Clint nodded. Right. Well, I'm hoping they can help me out. My mother's lakeside estate might be 4,000 square feet, but somehow it still feels claustrophobic right now. I gave a sympathetic nod. Taking care of a dying person had to be one of the hardest, saddest jobs imaginable. I didn't blame him one bit for wanting a place of his own to get away from it all. So this rental, long or short-term lease? I dared to ask. We'll see what they can do, he said, with a half-cocked grin as he raised a hand and left the shop. I worked throughout the day, unsure of what to make of Clint's comment. If he was going through the trouble of finding a rental, it seemed natural to assume he was planning on staying in Winterspell for the foreseeable future. Otherwise, why go through the trouble? And if all he wanted was a crash pad, surely with his money he could afford a suite at the Winterspell chalet and stay in style. A rental was a commitment. But it didn't mean it was a commitment to me. Celine kept to herself after our little battle that morning, and I wondered if she would come back to the shop before I closed up. I wasn't going straight home after work. It was Tuesday, and I had standing dinner plans at my mom's house. I about stepped on the cat when I went to take out the trash. "Celine!" I exclaimed, jumping back. "You're going to get one or both of us killed. What are you doing out here on the step?" The cat lazily rolled to her other side, showing off her belly.
"Catching some rays,"
she said. Scoffing, I made a show of stepping over her, took the trash to the dumpster, and then brushed my hands off on my apron before pulling it off and folding it into a loose square. "Come on, it's family dinner night. I'm assuming you're tagging along?" That got her to her feet.
"Ooh, do you think Lilac made her crab puffs again this time?"
I smiled as I locked the back door. Guess we'll have to go find out. We drove across town to my mom's house and made our way inside, not bothering to knock. It wasn't the house where I'd spent my childhood, but it still felt like home to me. Mom was in the dining room, laying plates out around the table. "Hey," I greeted. "Can I help you with anything?" I frowned and counted the plates. There was an extra setting. "Are we having company tonight?" "Oh my gosh, do you have a date?" Mom scoffed. "Absolutely not. You know I'm not interested in dating." I sighed. "I know that you say that, but I secretly think maybe one day you'll bump into Mr. Wonderful in the paper towel aisle at the market or wind up going on a blind date with a handsome stranger when there's only one table left at Dragon's Gold." Mom laughed. "Oh, Cora, you should write books. You have quite a mind for fiction." She set down the last of the silverware, then clasped her hands together and smiled at me. "Besides, don't you already know who's coming to dinner? He was supposed to tell you." "He? He who?" "Why, Roger, of course. He said he was going to drop by the shop today and let you know." I flinched. Roger's little impromptu visit suddenly made a lot more sense. Celine cackled.
"You should see your face, Cora."
Mom smiled. "It's just a dinner, Cora. It will be fine." How did this even happen? We ran into each other at the movie theater yesterday afternoon. We were both flying solo, as the kids say, and so we sat together and got to talking during the previews. He mentioned how much he's missed my cooking, so I thought, to heck with it. Why not invite him over? I could think of about a dozen reasons, chief among them being that he's your daughter's ex-husband. I rubbed one hand over my head. My hair had air-dried and lay flat against my head without the help of a spritz of product. It will be fine, Cora, Mom said, already sashaying into the kitchen with Celine hot on her heels.
Any chance you made those crab puffs?
Celine asked, before glancing over her shoulder to snicker at me. 12. In this corner, Cora Hearth weighing in at... Well, never mind. She's a specialist in creating magical candles and getting involved with indecisive men. In the opposite corner, Lilac Hearth, Cora's stubborn as a mule mother, a.k.a. the irresistible force. Ding ding, round 1. Mom, you can't keep interfering in my life like this, I said, following her into the kitchen as she checked the contents of the oven. The smell that poured out of it was so delectable I almost got derailed. How am I interfering? It's my house, my dinner, and my chorizo stuffed chicken, and I'll invite whoever I want over for dinner. My mother straightened up and doffed her oven mitts. Needs about 8 more minutes. You seriously don't think this is weird? Inviting my ex to dinner? I said in an exasperated growl. He's your ex, but he's also a dear friend of mine. I didn't stop being friends with him just because the two of you divorced. He was good to you, Cora. He was good for you, too, if you ask me. Yeah, well, I'm not. And I don't appreciate you making it sound like I did something wrong or drove him away. We're both adults. We made our choices. Mom stopped and braced one hand on the edge of the counter. And which one of you brought up the D word? She asked. My mouth dropped open. You cannot be serious right now. Also, pot kettle much? You're divorced too. What would you say if I invited Dad over to one of these family meals? Would that be just peachy keen?
Drats, I need popcorn. Or maybe popcorn chicken,
Celine quipped as she watched us like we were in a verbal tennis match. Mom's eyes blazed with heat, and a flare of sparks shot from her fingertips. She jerked her hand away from the counter and extinguished the flames she'd conjured. That would be a little hard to do, seeing as he's across the country. I also don't think his little Pop-Tart and their 3 brats would approve. I cringed. Bringing my dad into this was a mistake. Truth be told, I didn't have much of a relationship with him, beyond the annual birthday and Christmas card exchange. Okay, maybe that's not the same thing, I conceded. But still, didn't you even think about asking me if I would be okay with this? Mom pursed her lips, then exhaled, and some of the fight drained from her eyes. I guess it didn't occur to me that you would mind. Maybe I missed something along the way, but I thought you said you and Roger were trying to be friendly since he's returned to town. Your divorce was night and day compared to me and your father. She crossed to the stove and tasted a green bean and potato concoction burbling on the stove. Her brow furrowed, and she used spell work to cause the salt shaker to take flight and sprinkle over the pot. All I meant was that we smile at each other in public, and yes, he stopped by the shop a time or two.
A time or two?
Celine sputtered. I shot her a death glare. Stay out of this. Okay, well, what would you like me to do, Cora? Should I call him and tell him he's uninvited? And your winner by a TKO in the first round, Lilac Hearth, a.k.a. the irresistible force. Sighing, I held up my hands in surrender. It's fine. We can get through one meal, but please let's keep things casual and not make this a regular thing, all right? Celine scoffed.
Typical.
My brother Evan came in the side door and looked between me and Mom. Whoa, what's going on in here? Mom slapped a sweet smile on her face. Nothing at all, sweetie. She pecked him on the cheek as he leaned his tall frame in for a hug. How have you been? Emmy lost her first tooth yesterday at the park. She got a visit from the tooth fairy, and now I think Ruby is trying to knock one of her teeth out so she can be just like Sissy, he said, with an exasperated sigh. So if either of you catch them going after the other with a croquet mallet, please intervene. I couldn't help but giggle at the visual. My twin nieces were a handful on the best of days, but when they teamed up for a shared mission, look out, world. Something smells amazing, Evan said, bending over to take a peek inside the oven. Mom playfully slapped him away. A few more minutes. Why don't you get the girls washed up? Evan pulled a face but laughed as he headed out of the kitchen to round up his family. Now, Celine, I know it's not quite what you expected, but I think you'll like it. It's a recipe I picked up from that cranky British chef, the one who makes people cry. Gordon Ramsay, I supplied. No, not him. He's a blonde fellow, spiky haircut, likes to curse a lot. Had a show called, what was it? Hell's Kitchen. I think that's it. Yes, that's Gordon Ramsay, Mom, I said, a bit annoyed. No, that doesn't sound right. His name sounds like May. That's it, Bobby Slay. Bobby Flay, Mom? And he's a totally different guy than Gordon Ramsay. No, I'm pretty sure it's Bobby Slay. I grabbed my phone. Look, I'm going to show you a picture of Gordon Ramsay, and you tell me if it's the guy you're thinking of. A knock came at the door, and I froze. Roger. It had to be Roger. I ran my hand over my hair once more. Evan's voice sounded from the front room. This feels like a flashback, he said with a jovial laugh. How's life treating you, man? Can't complain, Roger replied. How about you? The girls are getting so big. Evan laughed again. Tell me about it. They just started kindergarten, if you can believe it. I swear I need a pause button. Evan poked his head in the kitchen, wearing a huge grin as he met my eyes. Did I miss something? Are you two back together again or something? Mother, maiden, and crone, I sincerely hope there is wine around here somewhere. Roger wore a pair of designer jeans and a charcoal turtleneck. His face creased into a smile when he saw me. Nah, we're just friends. Oh. Evan sounded slightly deflated. Who knew my entire family was on Team Roger? It was certainly news to me. I grabbed a corkscrew and a bottle of Merlot and headed into the dining room. Roger followed me and grabbed at my elbow. Cora, is it okay that I'm here? He asked, keeping his voice hushed. I set the bottle on the table and started attacking the cork. Does it matter what I say? You're here. Let's just get through this. Here, Roger said, taking the bottle from me as I struggled to get the cork free. He popped it out without so much as a flinch, then handed me the bottle. I'm sorry, I wanted to tell you this morning, but... Nodding, I poured myself a generous serving of the red wine. I know, Clint was there. Are you two, getting serious? I don't know. I shook my head, then gulped from my wine glass. It's new, you know? I haven't done this since you and me were... you and me. Roger gave a solemn nod. Right. My mother swept into the dining room from the kitchen, bearing a steaming bowl of green bean and potato medley. Behind her, Evan struggled to keep the heavy roast chicken from sliding off the sterling silver platter. Ruby and Emmy bounded into the room, and each clung to one of my legs, nearly sending my wine sloshing all over their adorable little heads. Roger swooped in and saved the wine, taking the glass from my hand, our fingers touching for the briefest of moments. Thank you, I told him, before leaning over to put my face level with my nieces. I hear someone met the tooth fairy. Emmy pulled her lips away from her teeth in a slightly crazed-looking smile to show off the gap in her front teeth. I'm going to be next, Auntie Cora, Ruby declared with gusto. I kissed her on the forehead. Don't be in such a hurry to grow up. Auntie Cora can't take it. That made them giggle. Cheyenne, Evan's wife, stepped in and took the girls to get washed up for dinner. And then we all sat down around the table and dished up the delicious-smelling meal. I spooned some of the vegetable medley onto my plate first, then made sure Celine got a piece of chicken before she read me the riot act. Have you tried the chicken yet, Roger? Mom asked. I'm just about to cut into it, he replied with a smile. He sliced into the roast chicken and placed a dollop in his mouth. His eyes fluttered closed, and he let out an appreciative groan. This is delicious, Lilac. I'm telling you, you should open a restaurant here in Winterspell. I'd be there every day. Mom laughed and waved her linen napkin at him. Oh, stop. It's just a simple meal. It's really good, Mom, Evan agreed. I nodded in agreement. Celine was too busy stuffing her face to comment on the meal, although her remaining speechless truly was the highest compliment she could offer. So, Roger, tell us what you've been up to now that you're back in town, Mother said sweetly. Did you get tired of the big city life? Roger finished chewing and washed down his mouthful of chicken with a sip of wine. Well, I'll tell you what, big city life isn't all it's cracked up to be. Oh? How so? There's people all around you, yet you don't really know anybody. Everyone is always in such a hurry. Sure, there are things I liked about it. It was easy to get to live music performances and other big events that came to town, and it was nice to have an endless supply of restaurants and things, but for the most part, it's actually kind of isolating to live in the city. Aw, it sounds like you might have gotten a little homesick, Mom replied. Roger smiled. I'll say this, there's no place like home. He smiled at me, and for a moment, a lot of old feelings stirred up in my chest. I didn't want to feel those things, and a fresh wave of irritation toward my mom bubbled up. So, Cora, Evan said, trying to move past the awkwardness. How are things going at Wicked Wicks? Every time Cheyenne and I drive past there, it looks like there's a lot of cars out front. It's been busy, that's for sure. Some days it seems like it's still the height of tourist season, but I'm sure things will calm down soon. Mom's eyes glowed. Are you still finding time to get out on the lake? You know, Roger and I were talking about kayaking yesterday. The two of you should plan a time to go together. I always worry about you going out on the water alone, Cora. I wear my life vest and I'm hardly a novice, Mother, I said through clenched teeth. We actually did kind of go on a little float together a couple of weeks ago, Roger said cheerfully. Mom perked up in her seat while I cursed him silently in my head. The agonizing dinner wore on until the dessert course, when I finally managed to drag Roger away while my mother checked on the firmness of the key lime pie. I practically dragged him out onto the front porch and confronted him. What do you think you're doing in there? I demanded. Roger frowned in confusion. I'm not doing anything. Yes, you are. What's with all the, oh, there's no place like home stuff? We're talking about our kayak trip. It wasn't even a trip. We just happened to be out on the water at the same time and paddled near one another. Cora, why are you getting so upset about this? Clearly, accepting your mother's invitation was a mistake on my part, but I didn't want to be rude when she asked me over. I honestly didn't think you'd have a problem with it. I rubbed my temples, my eyes closing for a moment. If you want, I can leave now, he offered. My eyes popped open again. No! Then I'll hear about it for the rest of the night, how I scared you off. I glanced over my shoulder, through the front window. Mom was carrying the pie into the dining room. Come on, I said. Let's just finish this thing. I didn't wait for him to agree before I slipped back inside the house. I spent the dessert course in silence, digesting more than just the meal. I remained conflicted about my feelings for Roger. Every time I saw him, I grew more confused. I was happy with Clint. But still, something about seeing Roger, about sitting around my family's table like old times, it muddied the waters and left me reeling. If I was truly over him, why did it matter at all? And more pressing, would I always feel this way? Or would it one day just fade completely away? Roger left shortly after pie, making an excuse about a work thing in the morning. A few minutes after he left, Evan and Cheyenne packed up the sugar-high twins to get home for bath time. That left me to help my mother clean up and pack away leftovers. I tried to avoid discussing Roger at all. I truly didn't want to get locked into another argument. So, I turned the topic to Aunt Lavender. Celine and I took turns laying out our progress over the past week, including the details about Salvatore Greco's mysterious death and the possibility that Lavender had a potentially dangerous book in her possession prior to her abduction. Mom shook her head. What would your aunt be doing with such a thing? From what I understand, she sort of borrowed it accidentally on purpose and forgot to return it. Maybe. Anyway, I thought I'd ask if she mentioned anything about it, or if you had any idea where she might have stashed it. Like, maybe she has a safety deposit box or something? No, I can't say that I do. As for the deposit box, if she had one, she never mentioned it to me. Mom frowned as she hand-dried a plate. We talked a little more about Lavender, all of us shadow-boxing around the fact we were worried sick about her. I took my leftovers and drove home, while Celine reenacted the more painfully awkward moments from the dinner. She didn't stop until I threatened to switch her to Walmart brand cat food. Of course, Celine's teasing was nothing compared to the torment offered up by my own mind. I was going to have to figure out how I felt about Roger, and soon. 13. After the high-stress dinner at my mom's house, I took a few me days, where I reverted to my pre-Celine routine of going to work, then going to the lake until sunset, before getting takeout and returning home for some reading or mindless TV. I'd hit dead ends on all fronts. I had no idea where Lavender was or how to find her. I'd emailed August Nell's office to see about getting a meeting, but so far hadn't found a way past the gatekeepers who managed his inbox. My mom had texted a few times since Tuesday, but I kept my responses brief. I didn't want there to be tension between us, but I also wanted to set a boundary. As for Clint, he was busy with a big work thing and somewhat unavailable, which was fine with me. I needed some time and space after the whole scene with Roger. By Saturday, I was starting to come out of my funk, which was a good thing because I needed to be on my A-game for the weekend rush at Wicked Wicks. Celine was suspiciously absent most of the day, and by the time I was getting ready to close, I was wondering just what she'd done with herself all day. While I'd been self-soothing with cookie dough ice cream and long evenings on the lake, she'd been off doing her own investigative work. When I stepped out of the shop to lock up, I checked my watch. There was still time to swing by the library. It was sprinkling out, and while I wasn't opposed to kayaking in the rain, the idea of a cozy night in with some new books sounded more appealing. So I biked over to the library, locked my bike up outside, and hurried toward the front door, pausing only to shake the water from my lightweight jacket underneath the awning before going inside. The library was warm and quiet, and the smell of books beckoned me deeper inside. I spotted Frankie at the main checkout desk and scurried past, hoping she wouldn't notice me.
Cora?
A loud voice called. Cringing, I spun around and found Celine waltzing down one of the aisles. I peeked over my shoulder, and sure enough, the cat's greeting had attracted Frankie's attention. She pursed her lips and quickly turned away to tend to the next person in line. Celine, what are you doing here? I asked, turning back to the cat.
Looking for information about Oben's book, she said. Isn't that what you're doing here? You finally decided to stop wallowing and make yourself useful?
Before I could defend myself, she wheeled around the end cap display and sauntered down the next aisle.
I decided we needed a new angle,
she continued, not bothering to look back and check whether or not I was following along. Muttering to myself, I jogged 2 paces to catch up with her. A new angle, huh?
Sal wasn't the first person to get his mitts on Oben's book, Celine replied. That book has launched dozens, maybe even hundreds of treasure hunting campaigns, and there have been plenty of books, articles, even a documentary series about Oben's quests.
Okay, I nodded. So you think that even without the book we might be able to figure out what kind of quest Aunt Lavender was gearing up for?
We'll get to know the players, Celine said. Lavender must have approached people as part of her research. If she let it slip that she had the book itself, well, that news would have spread quickly through the treasure hunting circle. If we can find out those names and faces, we'll have a new pool of possible suspects to look into.
I had to hand it to her. It made sense. The majority of magical beings and creatures couldn't care less about a musty old book, even if it was said to contain some kind of treasure map. It was almost funny how mundane and normal the lives of witches, wizards, mages, and fairies could be. Non-magic humans would likely assume that every day in Winterspell played out like something from a fantasy movie, when in reality, magic or not, most creatures craved routine and the comfort of the familiar. Not everyone wanted to go off on some life-altering quest or battle dragons just to find out if they had a pile of gold.
Come on,
Celine said, leading me to a table full of books.
I'll show you what I found so far.
A passing librarian stopped to politely ask if Celine needed any more assistance.
I'm good. My apprentice is here now,
the cat told her. Apprentice? I frowned. Hardly. Celine jumped onto the table and padded over to an open book, its pages pinned down by a paperweight in either corner. Clearly, she'd had the poor librarian at her beck and call for the past however long she'd been in here.
Listen up. You might learn a thing or two, she told me. Have you heard of Tabitha Hardwick?
I shook my head as I pulled out a chair and sat down. No, can't say I have. Who is she?
This is her memoir,
Celine said, gesturing with a paw.
She's essentially a magical Indiana Jones with a travel vlog.
Oh?
She personally saw and handled the Oban tome at one point or another. There's another one over there, written by a fire mage who ran an expedition to find a sunken pirate ship that had a chest of gold.
How was that related to magic?
Apparently, the ship is guarded by undead pirates. No one who went after it ever came back, until this guy.
Yikes. Okay. So all of these books are somehow connected to Oban's book. Celine nodded.
Yes, and you're going to check them all out.
Right. I got to my feet and began gathering everything up. I was going to bump up against my limit on total number of checkouts allowed, but generally the Winterspell librarians weren't too persnickety about such things. Of course, no sooner had I thought that than I remembered who was currently manning the checkout desk. Oh boy, I muttered, getting in line behind a family. Maybe we should go to the one upstairs, I whispered to Celine. Celine eyed me.
You want to carry all of those upstairs?
My arms were full to bursting, and it seemed the cat had a talent for choosing the heaviest books in the library to take home. No, I said after a moment.
Didn't think so.
The family ahead of us took a few minutes, as each of the 3 small children picked out a special toy from a basket. I smiled as I watched them. I remembered back to my own childhood when I participated in the library's readathon program. For every book read, a child was awarded a certain number of points, and eventually could save up enough to cash out for a prize. Once the kiddos had made their selections, the parents shepherded them along, and I started to take a step forward, only to be cut off by a polished-looking man in a tailored suit.
Yo, back of the line, mister,
Celine exclaimed. The man didn't so much as flinch. He spread his palms along the counter and leaned in toward Frankie. I'd like to see the books donated by the Greco estate. Frankie blinked. There have been a number of tomes donated posthumously by the late Mr. Salvatore Greco. Great, that's great. So, how much for the lot? The man reached into his pocket and withdrew a leather wallet. I'm sorry? Frankie's brow furrowed. I'm not sure I understand. The man flashed a smile, but his jawline tightened. I'm buying all of the Greco books, please. Name your price. Frankie was starting to look a little flustered. Sir, the books are not for sale. They were donated to the library. Once they have been processed and enter into our system, you'll be able to check them out. No. The man shook his head as he dug into his wallet and produced a thick stack of green bills. No, that won't work. I want to take the books tonight. We can do this all under the table if that makes it easier. I'll make it worth your while. A pinch of anger crept into Frankie's eyes, making them a little harder. I am the head librarian of this establishment, sir. You cannot bribe me or any of my staff to sell books intended for this library. Salvatore's will was very specific, and even if I wanted to go along with this proposal, I wouldn't be able to. The books are not here yet. All I have is a list of what we can expect to receive when the time comes. The man straightened up, giving me my first good look at him. Tall and thin, almost lanky. Everything about him screamed wealth, even setting aside the fistful of... Were those hundreds? Jeepers. His lean face drew back in a smile, though it looked faker than the extended warranty telemarketers kept trying to sell me. I'm sorry. Perhaps I'm not making myself clear. My name is August Nell. He paused, as if that alone would bowl Frankie over. She didn't react, but my heart certainly did. It jumped into my throat as I looked down at Celine, ensuring she'd heard it too. Well, it's nice to meet you. We always appreciate fellow book lovers around here, but as to the matter of Mr. Greco's books, I'm afraid I have nothing left to say on the matter, Frankie said. Her tone seemed as strained as her smile. August Nell's jaw tightened. I see. That's unfortunate. He turned and stalked away from the counter, making a beeline for the doors. Should we go after him? I asked Celine. Frankie's voice interrupted before I could make a decision. Ugh, not you again. Come to accuse me of another crime, have you? Why can't you leave me alone? No, I said, lumbering forward to relieve my arms of the large stack of books. Stars, that burns, I complained as I shook out my arms and wiggled my fingers. Frankie, I swear I'm not here to accuse you of anything this time. It all really was just a misunderstanding, I think. Frankie's eyes widened. You think? Well, it's just...
That little twerp next door busted your alibi,
Celine interjected.
Said he saw you sneaking out around midnight while he was in the middle of his nerd fest of a video game.
Frankie shook her head in slack-jawed disbelief. What is wrong with you? Do you just wander through life assuming the worst of people? I told you, yes, I was angry at Salvatore, but I never considered acting on those frustrations, other than yelling at Ernesto at Merlin's well. But that was a mistake, and I have since apologized to him. Frankie huffed an exasperated sigh. If Chris saw me leaving my house, it was when I went to the corner store for a sleeve of Oreos and a cheap bottle of wine, all right? There. That's my big secret. You caught me. I had a terrible night and I went out to get a little comfort. I was back home 10 minutes later. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Orlando. He works the late shift and he knows me. I really am sorry, Frankie. I swear I wouldn't be pushing this hard, but it's... I paused and exhaled slowly. My Aunt Lavender was kidnapped. The police aren't taking it seriously, so I'm left on my own.
Hey, what am I, chopped liver?
Celine piped in. Celine was my aunt's familiar, and we're both worried sick and probably not thinking clearly.
Speak for yourself, Celine interjected. My mind is as sharp as a razor wire.
I rolled my eyes. Frankie's expression softened somewhat. I didn't know. I'm sorry about your aunt. She's a special lady. Thank you. I swallowed the unexpected ball of emotion in my throat. Outside of the police, Clint, and my own family, this was the first time I was really talking about Aunt Lavender with someone. Sal called and left a message on her machine a few days ago. He didn't know she was missing, and he was railing about this book he thought she'd swiped from him. Anyway, long story short, we think figuring out what happened to him might somehow help us figure out what's happened to her. Frankie nodded. It's not an excuse, though. You're right. I've been completely out of line here, and I truly am sorry. She didn't respond right away, instead opting to begin scanning in the books piled between us. When she flipped over the third one, she glanced up at me. "Any chance Salvatore's missing book was the Odyssey of Oben Amarath?" she asked. "Yes. You know it?" "Well, I mean, any librarian worth their salt knows about the book, but I've never seen it before." She squinted. "Wait, so you're saying Salvatore had it?" I shrugged. "That's what he told us. The day before he died, actually." "Wow." Frankie clucked her tongue and finished scanning in the books. "Well, it looks like you've got a good primer here on all things Oben Amarath. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know, okay? If I can help Lavender, I will." "Thanks, Frankie. That really means a lot to me." We headed out of the library a few moments later, my arms once again begging for mercy under the weight of Celine's research pile. "You're going to have to hoof it," I told her, as I deposited the books into the basket.
"I don't have hooves," she complained. "Just let me ride on your shoulder."
"No, you always scratch the bejeebus out of me."
"I'll be delicate, you little doily."
I swung my leg over the bike. "Nope. It's either the purse or you walk."
"The purse?" Celine whined. "But I don't want to be like one of those yappy little ankle biters."
"Suck it up, Buttercup." Celine shot me a cold glare, but then acquiesced to being loaded into my crossbody purse for the ride home. "I say we officially cross Frankie off the list," I said as we started down the road. "My gut tells me she's being honest. If we want to double-check with the mini-mart guy, we can, but I'm not sure I see the need."
"What about August Nell?"
Celine asked. "He was a piece of work, wasn't he?"
"He was a piece of something,"
Celine muttered. "Maybe we should have gone after him. I don't know. I've emailed his office, but no one has given me more than a canned response about the message being forwarded on and thanking me for my patience." I chewed my lip for a moment, then continued my stream of thoughts. He wants Sal's books, badly, and I get the feeling he isn't going to take Frankie's no as a final answer. Celine's ears went back.
"You can tell a lot about a person based on first impressions. I'm telling you, this guy is bad news."
If August Nell was our killer, then that would make him very dangerous indeed. Anyone callous enough to kill over a book would surely kill again to keep that murder under wraps. I resolved to find out as much about August Nell as I could, and soon. 14. This is the place? The 4-story square office building was painted a bland gray color. A series of cement planters filled with some variety of a variegated shrub were the only things bringing any color to the exterior. It didn't look fit for a millionaire, but then Winterspell is a tad short on skyscrapers with helipads on the rooftops.
"That's the address from the flyer,"
Celine said, flicking her tail at the black numbers mounted in the stone facade set above a set of glass doors. Technically speaking, August Nell was based out of San Francisco. But during our research phase, we'd learned that he had properties all up and down the West Coast, most of which weren't even in magical communities like Winterspell. I had no idea why he kept an office in Winterspell of all places. With his wealth and connections, he could have a second office in any number of exciting locales. Somehow, in the process of emailing August Nell's office, my email address had been stuck into an automated newsletter targeting aspiring developers. As it turned out, August was hosting a conference for magical real estate agents, developers, and flippers right here in Winterspell, at his so-called home away from home, the Winterspell Chalet. The conference wasn't for another 3 months and came with an eye-watering admission cost. I'd slid down to the bottom to unsubscribe myself when I spotted an address in teeny-tiny print and realized it was a business address I hadn't seen on his main website. "You ready for this?" I asked Celine.
"I was born ready,"
she assured me. "Which time?" I teased. "You always say you're on your 9th life."
"That's because I am. Yeesh. I'm surprised your mother was able to birth you with that thick skull of yours."
The glass doors slid open, and we stepped into a comfortably appointed lobby. A water feature hissed nearby, burbling into a little pool where bamboo grew. Or at least I thought it was bamboo. The thick carpet absorbed the sound of my footfalls as I approached the front reception desk. It appeared August rented out the entire building, as it was his name affixed to the wall behind the desk in a bold serif font. It was a busy Monday morning, and it seemed as though everyone was running late for something. "Hello," I said, smiling at the receptionist. "I'd like to—"
"That's hardly my concern."
Her eyes narrowed, and her voice dropped to a low growl. I looked to Celine to see what I had done wrong, but my familiar seemed just as confused as I was.
"You know that Mr. Nell expects a high degree of attention to detail. Not only were we sent the wrong flowers, but we were also shorted an arrangement, so no, I don't care that purple daylilies are hard to come by right now, just make it happen."
The woman sighed and tapped a button, then turned her gaze and a smile my way.
"I'm so sorry you had to hear that. How can I assist you?"
I blinked. "I'm here to see August Nell, if that's possible." The woman's smile froze, and her eyes seemed almost afraid.
"Do you have an appointment? I don't see anything on his calendar for this morning."
The woman's gaze drifted to the right, consulting a large computer screen. "I don't have an appointment, but—"
"I'm sorry, but without an appointment, there's nothing I can do. Mr. Nell is a very busy man."
The receptionist pointedly folded her hands on top of the desk and smiled sweetly.
"Tell you what, I can take a message, and if he has time, he will get in touch with you at his convenience. I'm sure you can understand. Time is money, after all."
"Could you tell him it's regarding Salvatore Greco? I really think he will be interested in what I have to say. He and Mr. Greco were acquaintances. If I could just speak with him for a few moments, I wouldn't have to take up any more of his time than that." She sniffed derisively and plucked a business card from a holder on the desk. As she extended it toward me, she tapped an acrylic nail against the glossy cardstock.
"There's an email address here. I'm sure someone on his executive team can forward on your information."
"I've already tried that. I got a canned response and put on some kind of real estate marketing email list."
"Well, as Mr. Nell always says, persistence is 99% of the secret recipe to success."
Celine jumped up onto the counter and peered at the woman, then looked up at me.
"She's kidding, right?"
The receptionist recoiled slightly, her rolling chair scooting back from the desk a few inches. Celine leaned in.
"She's stonewalling us, Cora. How are we going to get past her and talk to August Nell when he's got the Terminator as his receptionist?"
My eyes narrowed to slits. I had a plan, but it was pretty evil. "Celine," I said, "do you remember that song you were singing to me the other day?"
"Oh, you mean There's No Food in My Bowl?"
"Yes, that one."
"What about it?"
"I think you should sing it, as loudly as possible."
"What?"
Her ears went back in suspicion.
"But you hate my singing in general and that song in particular."
"Yes, and so will everyone else." She caught the wicked gleam in my eye and grinned.
"Now you're speaking my language. Ahem. Me, 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 me. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Lion face, lemon face. Lion face, lemon face."
"Get on with it." Celine gave me one final glare before belting out a rendition of her song.
"Oh, there's no food in my bowl. The humans are stupid for sure. They open their mouths and I see manure."
All around us in the lobby, the hard-working urban professionals clasped their hands over their ears and groaned, their faces masks of misery. The receptionist looked on with the kind of horror usually reserved for gas station bathrooms on Taco Tuesdays. "Please make it stop doing that." "I don't have the power to make it stop. Only you have the power to make it stop." The woman glared at me, but after a quick look around at all the attention we were receiving, she quickly surrendered. She got on her little Bluetooth headset and made the arrangements. Celine sang the entire time, much to everyone's chagrin, even my own. It was turning into a bit of a Frankenstein's monster situation. Luckily, I'd built up a hefty tolerance to Celine at that point. All those poor office workers and the sassy receptionist didn't stand a chance. They were defeated the moment Celine started singing. "Mr. Nell will see you in his office now," the receptionist hollered above Celine's god-awful screeching. I swear it was peeling the paint and making the lights flicker, it was so bad. "Please make her shut up." "Celine," I said, touching the cat on her back. "Celine, you can stop now."
"But I'm just working my way up to the hook."
"Yes, I know. That's why I'm in a hurry to stop you. Besides, we won. We got our audience with August Nell."
I guess my performance was so awesome that everyone couldn't take the beauty. Like beholding the true face of Zeus and exploding into dust because you can't handle it.
Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. It's the likeliest of scenarios. August's office was on the top floor. And while the building was only 4 levels, it still provided a beautiful panoramic view of Winterspell, with every wall of the office but one being made of glass. A different receptionist gave us a dirty look as she ushered us into the office where August sat, behind a long, low, modern desk. He rose at our entrance, adjusting his tie and plastering that phony smile of his across his face. "Well, as a businessman, I've had my fair share of people behaving strangely to gain an audience. You, however, are the first one to serenade my entire workforce with the dulcet tones of a feline familiar."
"Did you hear that? I have dulcet tones."
"Only to deaf people." I looked up to August Nell's implacable smile and tried to do the same. "Mr. Nell, thank you for taking the time to see us. I promise I'll make this quick." August gestured at the chairs opposite him and then retook his seat. I perched on the edge of the cushy seat, eager to get to business. "My name is Cora Harth, and this is Celine. We were at the library the other day and overheard you speaking with the head librarian about some rare books. More specifically, Salvatore Greco's collection." August's expression changed. He clearly hadn't expected that. Perhaps he thought I'd come to pitch him on some investment opportunity or to ask for personalized advice on how to best diversify my portfolio or whatever he got into. "Salvatore? I see. Yes, it's such a tragedy." He pushed his glasses up higher on his nose, the mechanical movement somehow reminding me of a praying mantis. "He will be missed by many, myself included." "How exactly did the two of you know each other?" August smiled. "I do a lot of business with a lot of different people in a lot of different places, Miss Harth." "Yes, but you specifically purchased rare tomes of magic and literature from Salvatore Greco, didn't you?" His lips may have twitched, but it was hard to tell. His gaze never wavered. "I'm sorry, I must have missed your connection to all of this. Are you a family member, or—" He let his voice trail off, leaving room for me to fill in the gaps. "I know Salvatore had the Odyssey of Oban Amarath," I said bluntly. I'd worry about whether the admission was a mistake later. As it was, the bait worked. August's demeanor changed as he leaned forward and braced his forearms on the edge of his desk, peering at me with deepened interest. "So he did have it. I was beginning to think he'd been pulling my leg. Tell me, where is the book now?" "You were going to buy it from him, then?" I asked. "I offered Sal quite a generous sum for the tome, yes. He told me he needed to think about my offer, which I took to mean he had a few other collectors on the line, so I upped my bid. But that didn't work. No, he kept stalling. In fact, during our last conversation, he took an almost hostile tone with me. I was most disappointed."
"Disappointed enough to kill the old geezer?"
Celine blurted. "Celine!" I gasped. August laughed. "You honestly think I would risk my empire over a dusty old book?" He shook his head, his grin widening. "No, it would have been an impressive trophy, but not worth killing for."
"And we're supposed to just believe you?"
Celine asked. I cringed. This was the Frankie situation all over again. Except I was pretty sure the guy on the other side of the table could do a lot more than send my library card through the shredder if he wanted to punish me for crossing him. So you can sing and you're a detective. Is that right? August asked Celine. Fascinating. He shifted his gaze back to me. You know, I like to collect all kinds of things. Is your pet available for sale? I blinked. I'm sorry, but what? Celine hissed. August laughed and leaned back in his chair. I jest. You two are clearly quite bonded. Like gorilla glue, I muttered. As to your question, I was at a charity event the night Salvatore passed into the stardust. If you'd like to verify it, you can find roughly 100 witnesses here in Winterspell, as it was hosted at my hotel. Perhaps you've been? The Winterspell Chalet? Celine scoffed.
This one makes candles for a living. We're lucky to get extended cable. There's definitely no dimes in the budget for a nice massage at that day spa. Unless you can get us a discount? Some kind of voucher?
August's eyes gleamed. I admire the hustle. Tell you what, for your trouble and excellent entertainment value, I'll see to it my assistant sends you home with a gift certificate, to show there are no hard feelings. That's really unnecessary, I stammered. August rose and pressed a button on his desk phone. As soon as I got to my own feet, the door swung open and the sour-faced assistant returned to ferry us out again. I glanced over my shoulder. Thank you for your time, Mr. Nell.
Can you believe that chump had the nerve to give us these?
Celine groused in the car. Between us, on the console, sat a pair of paper gift certificates. And the paper they were printed on likely cost more than the certificates themselves, $5 each. Which at the Icefire Day Spa, tucked inside the Luxe Winterspell Chalet, wasn't even enough to get one toe painted. We did kind of have it coming, I said. We made a ruckus in his lobby and then you flat out accused him of being a murderer. You've got to stop that, by the way. I go out of my way to naturally extract information and then you charge in. It's like swinging a wrecking ball when you meant to use a scalpel.
Well, that guy's a ghoul either way,
Celine muttered as I turned over the engine of my car. The radio kicked on softly, playing a country ballad. I cracked the front windows to get a cross breeze going. It was mild outside, but the interior of the car still felt a little stuffy after being parked in the sun. Just because we don't like him doesn't mean he's a killer. His alibi is pretty solid. Celine fell silent.
I still don't like him.
I know the feeling, but we have to be objective about this investigation, Celine. Not liking the guy isn't an indictment. We need solid evidence to connect him to the murder of Salvatore Greco. It's that simple.
Well, let's not race to conclusions just yet. Maybe he was lying about the charity shindig.
I doubted it, but I decided to humor her. I got the phone out of my purse and pulled up the social media page of the chalet. Scanning back a week, it was easy to spot the event, and the date matched up. There's hundreds of pictures here, I told the cat as I scanned through, occasionally flipping my phone around to show her one. It would take all afternoon to go through it all, but I see August in several of them. Safe to say his story checks out, and we can check him off our list.
I think we should check the timestamps,
Celine said with an air of stubbornness.
But not on that thing, it hurts my eyes. We need the bigger screen of your laptop.
Sighing, I pulled out onto the road and headed for home. Okay, but we don't have all day. I need to get the shop opened.
Why bother? That place is a ghost town on Monday mornings. It's worse than that, actually. At least if you had ghosts, there'd be someone to talk to.
Believe me, Celine, you provide all the commentary I could ever need. We drove home and fired up the laptop. As soon as it came on, Celine groaned at the update in the progress screen.
Oh man, come on. Installing 13 of 567? Do you ever turn this thing on, Cora?
It usually just lets me skip past it, I answered with a shrug. After I spent a solid 10 minutes watching a loading bar inch across the screen, and then do so again, my laptop was finally awake and ready to use. I logged in, and went back to the Winterspell Chalet's social page. The cover photo at the top read 35th Annual Charity Gala and featured a photo of August Nell, his arms around two of the other donors.
Pay attention to the timestamps of when they were posted, Celine snapped. He could have ducked out at some point.
Salvatore's house is a good 25-minute drive from the chalet. He would have had to be gone for at least an hour from his own event. Not likely. Besides, just because someone posts a photo at a certain time doesn't mean it was taken then.
Darn technology. What is it really good for?
Celine grumbled as I scrolled through the photos. August Nell showed up in the background of several and was the subject of a photo all his own.
So, Miss Smarty Pants, how do we tell what time these photos were taken?
I squinted at the screen. Well, judging by the depleted level of punch in the bowl behind August there, I'd say at least a few hours into the event. Celine pawed the screen.
Next slide.
Careful! It's a touch screen and your toe beans are recognized as fingers. The cat flashed her dainty fangs.
I know. How do you think you ended up with the complete series of the Beverly Hillbillies on Blu-ray?
I groaned. I knew that was you. It cost me $20 to ship that stuff back for a refund. I don't even own a Blu-ray player.
I know. That's what made it so funny.
Celine stared at the screen. Anyway, we're sort of getting off topic here. Let's look at some of the other social media pages. We found August Nell's picture showing up in several different feeds, along with a woman I assumed to be his wife or fiancée, judging by their body language and the honking diamond ring on her hand. Satisfied yet? I asked. See what I mean about bias? We don't like him, but we still needed to look at the evidence before forming any kind of theory incriminating the guy.
Yeah, enough with the I told you so's,
Celine groused. I scoffed. Celine, you love saying I told you so.
Yes, I know I love saying it. You want to know why I love saying it?
I grimaced. No, but I'm afraid you're going to tell me anyway.
Right you are, bucko. I love saying it because it drives people crazy.
So you can dish it out, but you can't take it?
I'm punching up. You hairless apes are running the world, like it or not, so anything I do or say is punching up. You, on the other hand, are the privileged, opposable, thumb-possessing species, so you'd be punching down. So don't punch down and say I told you so.
I rolled my eyes to the ceiling. All right, fine. I need to get going anyway.
Wait, check it out.
Celine touched the screen with her paw, making the image jump.
Isn't that Michelle, Ernesto's wife?
It sure looks like her. Wow, she cleans up well. It looks like she's speaking with August. I shook my head. They seem pretty friendly.
It looks like a candid shot. They didn't know their picture was being taken.
I think you're right. I set the laptop aside. This must be where they were talking about the book. Remember, Michelle is the one who first brought August to our attention.
So, Ernesto was out getting blasted while his wife was all dolled up and getting chatty with August Nell. It's a small world.
I pointed a finger at her. If you start singing that song, I swear to the mother I'll evict your furry little butt so fast it'll make your head spin. Grinning, Celine sat back on her haunches and started cleaning her paw.
Well, I wasn't going to, but thanks for the future ammo.
Ugh. I shoved off the couch, tossing my hands into the air.